side, it's really hard not to.
This is amazing grace. This is amazing grace.
Good morning. I love that last line of that song. Jesus, I sing for all that you have done for me.
Amen.
We welcome you to the launch of Amazing Grace this morning. You know, grace is God's unmerited favor, and when we begin to understand that we have that as believers in Christ, it makes our day, it makes our walk so exciting. This morning, joining me for the In the Word will be Bev Duke, and a powerful Bible teacher.
Yes.
And we'll talk a little more about Bev in a few moments, but I'm so glad when we decided that we wanted to do this. God just began creating some things in my spirit and my heart for, you know, He's always doing a new thing, amen? So who would ever dreamed we'd be launching this? And I'm excited for the plans that God has, not just for me or Bev, for Deb, but for Victory Worship Center. I am the host of the show, and I'm the senior pastor of Victory Worship Center. This morning, every week, we're going to have a special guest, and they're going to come at the end to give us their viewpoint on a lot of things that are going on. I was so excited. As soon as I knew what Bev was going to teach this morning, I knew exactly who I felt the special guest was going to be. So this morning, we're excited to welcome Deb Campany. And Deb Campany is a powerful prophetess of God. I've known you for about how many years, Deb?
Oh my gosh.
10, 12?
Yeah.
It's been a while. Time flies, you know. All I know is we were a little bit younger then.
Yeah.
But Deb is the co-business owner of Campany Roofing. So if anybody needs any roofing done in their house, amazing company, honest, fair.
I might need
So they've been doing this for so many years, and I really believe that God has blessed them abundantly because they're such a couple of blessing. They love to bless. And so I love having them in my life, but also Bev is the head of DC Ministries. And you can go to her website and find out all about DC Ministries. I've been to some of her, I know you're on hold right now. The Lord has had you on hold, Deb, but I've come to some of your conferences, and so powerful. So powerful.
Amen.
So I can't wait until the Lord releases you to do that again. Also, Deb Campany is the author of 2 books. These books are amazing. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about weekly meditations. This book is the best daily meditation book I have ever seen.
I need that.
Deb has a way of relating to you in such a way that the Spirit of the Lord can pierce your heart. That's why I love this book. God really anointed you. And what was fun is Deb and I wrote our first books the same year. So we were both always talking to each other. By the way, this is my book. This is your year. And then actually the same time, Deb, I had written my second book the same year because God didn't want me to forget what was going on in my life. But Deb wrote a second book. Weekly meditations you can get on Amazon if you would like one by Deb Campany. And then also her second book is Pursuing Your Purpose with Passion. Now if you want this book, you have to contact her directly on her website from DC Ministries, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I think it's an honor for the first launch as our special guest to have you with us this morning.
Thank you.
I'll tell you something, lots going on here in Florida, amen?
Yeah.
It is so hot. Did you ever think it could be this hot?
No.
Did you ever
No.
think it could get any hotter than this?
My hair went flat this morning as soon as
See
I
there?
did it.
The important things, our hair can go flat. Or if you have a swimming pool, you can't go in your pool because it's too hot to go outside because then you get it burned. So if you're watching us from another state, it's really hot here. All right? Well, I know we have a lot to go with, and this is a Bible study kind of talk show, something very unique and different. Every week we have a special guest, but we also may move into topics or Bible study, whatever and however the Lord would lead both Bev and I. So I want us to get right into the Word. Bev, I have heard you teach. I've heard you speak at conferences. You are absolutely a powerful teacher and speaker. No pressure. No pressure. And if she coughs a little bit, she has this little cough going on. And
I'm not sick.
not sick. So, and we're trying to be as far apart as we can this morning. We're trying to obey what the government's asked us to do.
Yes.
But we're just going to pray a hedge of protection around us right here. And so, Bev, I want to give the floor to you right now
All
because I want
right.
us to get into the Word.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you guys. And thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here. And I'm not sick, just so you know. When I get nervous, I haven't spoken a couple years, I get a little drip. So that's what that is. So, but so early on in the year, the Lord impressed upon my heart to do women's studies, like just for my own personal reflection, just some women in the Bible. I wasn't going to teach. I had no plans on that, but just some personal reflection. And I was just coming off my daughter being married in last October and just wonderful holidays, and I was on cloud 9. And then the coronavirus hit. And everything changed, just like in an instant. You know, none of us predicted that was going to happen. And I mean, who could? But everything changed. I mean, you know, health issues obviously changed, the way we felt about our health, the way we practiced our health. You know, we had heartbreaking racial issues come up. We had very deep, divisive political issues, men against women. We had all kinds of those things. So, and
You know what else I hated too?
What?
I hated that we couldn't socialize.
Yes.
I think God created us as social beings. He has a relationship with us
Yeah.
and wants us to have a relationship with other people. So when you even come to church, you have to hug like this, or
Yeah.
it's hard
Yes.
because we're social people. And I think
Yes.
that's been a really hard part.
Yeah, my daughter said, I don't know why people don't like wearing masks. I can go out shopping and pretend like I didn't see anybody. I have my sunglasses on. She loves it, but I hate it.
Me too.
But during this time, God led me to two studies in the Bible of a woman, two different women who have the same name, and that name was Tamar. And so for the sake of time, I'm going to quickly go through the stories, but I want you to know that these stories are so full that it would behoove anybody to really go into a deeper study to learn some of the characters in the story and to apply it to you personally. But really what we're going to try to focus on there is how this relates to mankind and what's going on now. So that's kind of where we're going to go. So what I'm going to do is just quickly go through the story and tell me if I'm going too
You're
fast.
talking a little fast, Bev.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I do that. But you know, just know that the stories get deeper. So I'm going to read a little bit and go back and forth. So first, we start with the story of Judah with his daughter-in-law Tamar. So now it's important that we know that Judah is the son. He's the fourth son, I believe, of our patriarch Jacob. So Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and it is also important to note that Judah, when this interruption in Genesis 38, when it comes after they just sold their younger brother, Joseph, into slavery. And it was actually Judah's idea. So now Judah, it says, he leaves his brothers. So I think he couldn't handle it. And he leaves his brothers, and he starts his life somewhere else. And it says that he marries a Canaanite woman, which we know is forbidden for that, the nation. And then he has 3 sons. Okay, he has 3 sons, and his firstborn son's name is and then Judah goes and finds a wife for his son and her name is Tamar. Okay, so but God finds wicked. For some reason, we don't really know why, but God finds him wicked in his heart, and God puts him to death. So that's how the story starts. He puts him to death, and then the custom was for the next brother in line to marry Tamar, and then to create an heir so that line will continue on. But that son decides that he doesn't want to do that because he knows the son won't be his, and so he decides to go ahead and sleep with Tamar. He likes that part, but he didn't.
Why?
But he decides to, as the Bible teaches, to spill his semen on the ground. And it says that God found that very evil in his sight. So then he puts Onan to death. Okay? So at this point, Judah now has the option. The custom is to give his 3rd son, Shelah, to Tamar, but he has fear. You know, he doesn't want that to happen to his third son. So he, at this point, he's having some, like, thinks it's Tamar's fault. So he comes up with a plan and he tells Tamar, hey, why don't you go and live with your father as a widow, and when my son Sheila grows up, then I'll give him to you in marriage, and then we'll go from there. So that's what she does. So she's a widow, still wearing widow clothes, and a long time passes. Okay, and Judah's wife dies. So we see that Judah's wife dies, and Sheila grows up, but Tamar is forgotten. And she knows that, and she sees it. So now it's sheep shearing time for Judah. He has a lot of animals, and it's that time for him. And he and a friend go down to shear the sheep. And Tamar, I know we discussed, it's
Right.
tomato, Tamar, or Tamar. I say Tamar, Pastor Sherry says Tamar.
Tamar, correct.
Right, but
Not probably right, but
but
it's
probably
okay.
not. She's probably not right. But anyway, so Tamar hears this, and she decides in her, like, she thinks she's going to do something about it. So she dresses like a prostitute and puts a veil on, and then she goes and waits by the side of the road. And here along comes Judah and his friend, and he sees this prostitute. And he's thinking, oh, well, this looks like something I might want to invest in. And he says to her, you know, sleep with me. And she says, well, what are you going to give me for payment? And he says, well, I don't have anything right now, but I have. She says, well, what will you give me in pledge? And he has his signet ring, his cord, and a staff. So he gives that all to her. And then he goes ahead and sleeps with her, and guess what? She gets pregnant. So when he goes to send payment, he can't find her. And he goes and sends a friend to do it. And he comes back and says, oh, we can't find her. And he goes, well, you know what? Let her have the things, you know. What does he care? So the time goes on. 3 months later, the town finds out that Tamar is pregnant, and they tell Judah, hey, Judah, your daughter-in-law is acting like a prostitute. And what are you going to do about it? And he says, take her out and let her be burned, because he found out she was pregnant. So he's thinking, oh, this is a great way to get rid of this situation, you know. And as she was brought forward, she says, I'm pregnant by the man who has these things belong to. So there Judah sees that it's his staff and signet ring and cord, and he says, she is more righteous than I. And because I wouldn't give my son Sheila to her. And then he marries her, but he stays celibate, and then she has twin sons, and out of one of them, Perez, comes the Messiah. And that's important to note, that because we'll talk about this later. But anyway, then there's the second Tamar, and the story's a little shorter. And that is that this young lady is a beautiful daughter of King David. Okay, and King David has these two sons that are also very handsome, but this Tamar, the first Tamar, is sister to Absalom. Now, please do a deeper study of this, because there's just so much in it, because I'm going to go really fast, but and this is just not going to be the point of the story, but please read these and go deeper into the study. So Absalom...
Where would they find that?
They would find this one in, I believe it's 2 Samuel 13. I believe that's where this is. And, you know, Absalom is very handsome, and his sister is very beautiful. But there's a half-brother named Amnon, and he just falls, the Bible says, in love. He's love-sick over Tamar. She's beautiful, young virgin, and he wants her, and he is love-sick over it. So he goes and he consults a friend who is very crafty, it says. He's very crafty. And he comes up with the plan for Amnon to have this young lady. So what Amnon does is he listens to this wicked advice, and then he involves King David in it. He says, you know, I'm not feeling well, and he has King David bring Tamar to her to feed him. So, which I think is questionable. I mean, that's just me, you know. But so that's what she does. And while he sends everybody out, he says, grabs her and he says, sleep with me. And she yells and says, no, don't do this. But he does anyway, and he rapes her. And then the minute he rapes her, it says that he hates her. And the feelings that he had of love quickly left, so we know that they weren't real love. They quickly leave, and then he hates her. And he has her banished and says, banish this woman from my sight. And now she says it's worse. It's worse than it was before. So while she's, he rapes her, hates her, casts her out, Absalom, his sister, her brother, finds him, tells her to keep quiet, devises a plan, and later on murders his brother in revenge. David finds out, he's furious, but does nothing about it. Tamar lives a desolate woman. That's the stories.
Can I interject right there for a
Please
minute?
do.
One thing when I was studying that story too, here you have this plan with Absalom. And first of all, now we find out that Tamar is at a place that her life's over because she's full of shame.
Yep.
She's living with Absalom. She's so full of shame, like if anyone knew what had happened to me, so she never married, never had children. But another thing I thought about in that story, it's not there, but this is the way I think. Here's Absalom. It says 2 years later is when he is going to avenge for his sister. And then when you know stuff about Absalom, I'm starting to wonder, did he really want to avenge for his sister? Because later on, he wants the throne. So he has a wicked heart.
Of course.
Also, his heart was wicked. He was more just as deceptive as the brother. There's a lot of deception going on in this whole line, right?
Right, exactly.
Right from Judah to
absolutely.
Absalom, Amnon, so much deception. And then the victim being Tamar. Both Tamars were victims, but this Tamar, the shame she lived in. For so many years. Sorry, go ahead.
So we've just heard these two stories.
Deb, you're going to talk.
We've just heard these two stories. Two women, same names, and then two fathers who neither disciplined these 4 wicked sons. So we have 2 daughters, 2 fathers, 4 sons. All 4 sons, end up dying. And the fathers neither advocated or protected their daughters. So we just see all this wickedness, deception. And when I first studied, I have to say, my thoughts were for the women because I'm a woman, and I know what it's like to suffer abuse. And so,
well, can I know you have another part to that. Can I ask you something? Can we stop right there for just a moment and ask Deb her insight on that, because I love what you said too, that you were a victim also.
Yes.
And so if we could just touch on that for a moment, and then we'll go to the second part of what you have.
Absolutely.
So Deb, I could see you were just itching when that thing was going on, and so tell us what your thought, what was going through your head when Bev was doing this incredible teaching.
Well, first off, I'm really glad that you shared both of them, because they were both victims, but the first Tamar, she actually did something about it. The second Tamar kind of gave up and lived in her victimization.
Yes.
And I too was a victim. I was a victim of being sexually molested from 3 to 12 years old. And I lived in the victimization for years, knowing that something needed to be done about it, but not really sure what to do about it. So it's been quite a journey in a process to get to the other side of that and to really and truly find myself again. So with the first Tamar, she actually did something about it, knew she was done wrong, and in a way it was as if she reclaimed her life.
Amen.
And the second Tamar just lived in that victimization and stayed there in that victim and lived there. And that's the choice that we have as individuals, whether being male or female. We are all victims of something. So we have a choice to either live there or decide to change.
Great point, Deb.
Yeah.
Great point.
That goes right along with, goes right along. So, my thoughts were for the women. I mean, these women were abused. Obviously, they were raped, they were used for sex, they were deceived, and then they were dismissed, which I feel like is my worst thought, is just they're dismissed, both of them. They were not advocated for, they were not honored, they were not cherished, they were not treasured, they were not respected. And so it triggered feelings and emotions of my own abuse. But while that was valid, and it is valid, because I've experienced that. I didn't want to just go by emotions. I felt there was something more that God wanted to say, and what is going on now in America in the crisis. So what I did, because I felt emotion too, this is very emotional, a lot of emotions going on in this story, is I sought God. And so I prayed. I really asked God, what do you want to show me? There must be something more. Is there anything deeper? Or do you want me to go along this path? And then all of a sudden, something stood out to me. And I said, that's it. Here's what stood out. I had just prayed when I needed help. I just said, okay, I don't know if this is, my emotions were triggered. So I was ready to act and go on the whole line of women being abused. But I waited, I stopped, and I sought the Lord.
Amen.
And I said, what is it that you're, because I'm just the prophet, I'm just the speaker, I'm just the teacher, what is it that you are wanting to teach? And what stood out to me is that not one account in either of these narratives, not one, had anyone sought God. Not anyone. Okay, so we have a whole lot of emotions, but no crying out to God for help, mercy, grace, wisdom.
Good point.
Not a king, not a prince, not a princess, not a father, a son, a daughter, daughter-in-law, not, rich or poor, royalty or peasantry. No one sought God that we know of, that the Bible says, and usually when they do, it will state, and he sought the Lord. But this is not the case. And these were God's people. I mean, these are God's people. So where there is no seeking God, wickedness abounds, and it keeps on abounding, right? So that's not to say that we don't face troubles and trials, because God said, Jesus said, that we would face many trials, tribulations, and troubles here on this earth. But Psalm 34 says, many are the trials of a righteous man, but the Lord delivers them out of how much?
Them all.
Them all.
Can I interject on
Yes.
this too? When we were talking about when you don't inquire of the Lord, I was taken right back. Of course, I know the book of Joshua inside and out, because I feel like, you
It's
say
your mantra.
certain books are yours.
Yes.
And I was thinking about the Gibeonites when they, in their deception, deceived Joshua, okay? But what happens? We get comfortable as believers, or we've been seeking God. Remember, he had victory after victory after victory. You get so comfortable with the victory that this must be of God. And so it says they were going to have to suffer the consequence the rest of their lives, because God said, you did not inquire of me. And so the Canaanites were, or whatever, all part of their lives interjecting. They became slaves basically at the time, but they were always causing problems. There was so much division between the Israelites and the Gibeonites. And all because he had sought him, and he had just gone through the defeat with Ai, but this time he was deceived. You would have thought he'd caught on, right? But don't we do that as believers? We get so comfortable because we do seek him. And so then we're thinking, well, of course this has to, you just think it's common sense. It was common sense that Joshua would have believed that lie.
Give us common sense.
Yes.
To inquire of the Lord.
Right.
Didn't
And we've
Ahab-
all done it.
Didn't Ahab, was it Ahab and Jehoshaphat? What were the two kings from Israel and Judah? Where the two kings where one said, I know one was Ahab, and he says, well, isn't there a prophet? Shouldn't we inquire of the Lord? And Ahab was like, well, I guess we can,
Right.
So let's move on. And okay, let's see where we are. So what would the outcome be different? That was what I felt like God was showing me. Would the outcome had been different in any of these circumstances? What if Amnon, he was so lovesick, what if he had just sought the Lord and said, I'm going crazy. I'm going crazy over this one, but I know it's wrong because I've been taught it's wrong. I'm also an ambassador for the kingdom. I'm in monarchy. Did he seek the Lord and said, help me with this struggle? Or what if David had said, what do I do with these sons of mine? We know from other stories that he didn't discipline his sons and didn't hold them accountable. And he said, what if he had just said, what do I do with these sons of mine, Lord? Please help me to train them up. And what do I do with my daughter who's just been raped? How can I make this up? What can I do to change the circumstance? What can I do? And because she didn't have to live like that. He could have advocated. And what if Judah?
How long though was it that David found out?
But you know what, Pastor Shaw, you had told me like 2 years, but I didn't see that account in the Bible because I looked this morning, and I'm not real sure, so I don't know. But my Bible said, and I had studied out of the Holman Christian Standard, that David was furious, and then 2 years later, Absalom killed, because it said Absalom wouldn't speak to Amnon. So 2 years he had been festering, waiting for the right moment to kill him. But that David, so I really don't know. I don't know. It was a couple
and
different.
You can interject anytime. Yeah, anytime, Deb.
And I do want to, because one of the other points here is that God witnessed all of this, every single piece of it, and never stepped in to stop any of it.
That's right.
And God won't step in to stop us from our own consequences unless we humble ourselves and ask Him for that help.
Perfect.
That's exactly right.
Perfect,
and that's
Deb.
where we're headed. So what if Judah had given? I think, what if, and one of the things, we're holding the women accountable. So we saw that those two women, one stayed in her victimization and the other one moved forward. But she didn't inquire of the Lord how to move forward. So she dressed like a prostitute. Obviously, that wasn't God's perfect plan for her to be a prostitute and sleep with her. Because what if she had prayed and said, Lord, I need you to intervene. I see that my father-in-law is not doing his duty to me. And maybe if God had intervened, Sheila would have been given. And then still that line of Judah would have come from, the Messiah would have come. That would have been the plan. But she stepped forward in her own plan. And it's really important, I think, to note that you're right, that she didn't stay in her victimization, but she had two sons, and the other son line, there were troubles, like it's a whole nother study. Some other things, like if she had just waited, I think God would have definitely advocated, He definitely would have fixed her situation. She was a go-getter, but she just stepped out a little too soon and didn't inquire of the Lord. And the other one just didn't inquire of the Lord either. She just stayed in her victimization and just sat desolate. What if she had said, go to her father. I want to have an audience with my father, the king. What has been done to me is not right, and I want, there's the ways these could have done. So that brings me to
She might have thought he wouldn't have done anything.
Yeah, maybe.
Right?
And I've been in that situation where I've been victimized and where I was afraid to stand up for myself, but what I did do was I went to God. I did go inquire of God, and He did it for me. So that brings me to this. So what about the crisis today? I see things, same kind of emotions, super emotional right now. Everything's so high on social media, Facebook, Twitter. We just see these crazy emotional, just not thinking before they say something. I'm an esthetician, and in my spa room, I have a captive audience, for a good hour. And I get to hear, they love to tell me their stories. And right now, emotions are so high. Just, Democrat against Republican, women against men, black against white, and vice versa. So everybody, emotions are high.
Very tense.
And when I heard the story, I was kind of out of it. I don't watch the news. I do watch it, but I read a different kind of news. And I'm not on any social media. Everybody bugs me to get on a little bit, but I'm not on anything. I'm on a need-to-know basis, I always say. God always shows me, and I always hear everything from people in my room. But when I had seen the video of Ahmaud Arbery, I was devastated because I have two sons, and I also have a son-in-law who's biracial. He's half black, and so I couldn't breathe. Like, I went into panic, and I ran upstairs. I got on my knees and I prayed, tell me what this is. What is this?
You mean George Floyd?
No, Arbery. He's the one who was, the man who was chased down. He was running in the neighborhood. He was chased down and shot. And we don't know the story. But the point is that God saw the bigger picture. And so what I did was I sought the Lord, because I was very much on the one side because my son had said, he had never experienced that. And I had to pray and ask God, give me wisdom, because I'm a super emotional person. And I said, give me wisdom. And I just sat back and relaxed. And there was another situation where I had the opportunity to intervene, that someone asked me to intervene in a situation, and it looked very emotional, but I didn't. So anyway, history repeats itself. We have an excellent time right now as Christians to really be distinguished between what's going on in the world and not be a part of all that. So God gave me 4 commands, and I'm just going to tell them real quick. We should all know these things. And this morning I looked and I saw that it was a little acronym, SWAT. But it all comes down to what you had said before, Deb, which was 2 Chronicles 7:14. If my people, who are called by my name, would humble themselves and pray and seek my face, I will forgive their sins and I will heal their land. And so here are these 4 things, and then we'll just finish up, talking about it. And one is that seek, that the Lord told me, seek his face, seek him first, and seek him always.
Amen.
No emotions going forth, but that's what we're supposed to do, like Daniel did, like Jehoshaphat did. That is what we're doing. The next thing was wait. When we do seek God's face, to not step out like Tamar did, and to not step out like Sarah and Abraham did, but to wait for his response. Don't take matters in my own hands, wait. The third thing was act. When God does show us, we need to act. We need to be brave. We need to step forward. I know that my call is for women who've been abused. So I need to step out even though I've been abused. And I have faced many triggers. And the last thing is to trust. We need to trust God for the outcome. And we don't think the outcome is coming out like we have. We've prayed, we've sought his face, we've waited, we've acted, we've done all of our thing. Now we just have to trust that God comes out with the outcome. So really, that's what God showed me. God took care of, you had mentioned one thing about God can take care, he's watching the whole situation. From the beginning, he took care of Onan and didn't he?
Bev, great teaching. And so Deb, as our guest, is there things that anything else that triggered in you that you feel like you would like to interject right now into this story, and why God would have you be our first guest? There's something you got to tell us.
Pressure's on me now. No, it's on God, actually. The thing that really resonated for me is one word: powerlessness. And it's very hard for people, individuals, who have suffered any type of trauma. See, I make up that the sons had big issues.
Oh, yes.
Okay, super huge issues, and the issues just went from one generation to the next generation.
Absolutely.
And we know where the women stood in that culture, and really and truly that, it's really difficult for me because I know that what I have gone through in my life. I got saved when I was 12 years old watching Billy Graham, and that was when I stopped the abuse. But as soon as I stopped the abuse, I took control. Amen. So I didn't know what to do with my Christian walk at that point. I just knew that God was always with me. From 3 years old, I knew God was there. I always had that connection. It wasn't until I was actually in the desert in Arizona when COVID hit. I'd taken 6 weeks to do some personal intensive work on myself. And I realized that, here I've been relying on God all these years, but there was times that I didn't admit I was powerless, and I didn't turn it over to him. And I would take control and do things my own way under the name of, I heard from God.
First
and
Tamar.
I heard from God to do this. So in spite of all that,
We've all done that.
God was still with me, patiently waiting for that time for me to surrender and fall open like that. I compared it to me being a boiled onion and falling on a rock. And everything that God had showed me and dealt with me about and tried to deal with me about for all these years was all coming together. The dots were all starting to be connected together, because it's just so easy for me when I'm in the midst of crises and chaos and things happening. I'm going to be honest, the first thing I don't think about is getting down on my knees and asking, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, I know because of my childhood trauma that I have a resilience about me, and it's actually a gift God gave me, but it's also a curse when I use it in the wrong way. So it's very, very easy for me to take that control. So, you know, I believe God in his all graciousness and patience with us, as just like in Psalms 23 says, he'll make us lay down.
Yes.
And now, we've always heard it said, God will not cross your will. Oh, but he'll make you lay down. You will lay down because things are going to happen in your life, just like they did there, to cause you to lay down in surrender to him. He will get you there.
But it's so much easier when you finally do.
When you finally do
get
it, and you realize it's as if God plays catch up to that moment for you.
And you're never too young and never too old to understand this process.
Yes.
Amen?
And you're never too far gone like the world would have you, too far caught up in your emotions, because the trigger for me in the emotional thing is just like instant trigger back to that place and just want to fix everything around me and deal with it.
Right, when you have that personality.
And the black and white thinking, and instead of realizing, you know, I don't need to be black or white thinking, that, you know, there's grace and there's
grace. That's a great time to...
amazing grace.
Yes,
There's
amazing
amazing grace. And we can't even begin to comprehend that. And that does not give any of us a right to misuse the grace. And see, I've always said that what happens is God gives us the grace, and then he gives us the mercy, and then watch out, you're laying down.
Yeah, amen.
You're going to lay down because he loves me too much to allow me to stay in where I'm in. And so even though Tamar dressed up as a prostitute and did that, God turned around and used that for his good.
All things work together for good to those who are in Christ Jesus.
So if you're thinking that you've got a mess that's just too far gone, just submit yourself to God, and he's going to just take you right back around and use it.
And then what does this word tell us? Anything we've gone through, we can use it to help somebody else. So there's always something good that God can do. And we need to start wrapping this up, but as you guys were talking about this, many years ago I was always ahead of an overcomers group, and one week it was so many women who had been abused, and I got in the car and I was just aching and crying. I said, God, you know what the thing is, why did God let this happen?
Yes.
You know what the Lord said back to me? It was so powerful. He goes, I didn't want it to happen. He goes, I kept speaking into that person who was victimizing somebody. But there's free will, and I can't stop someone from doing something. I can speak it to them. But he is there to be with us and get us through things and to love us and to say, you know what, you can be victorious.
And you can use it.
Yeah, amen. But we're going to wrap this up, and I love, Deb, how you just brought us right into the amazing grace of God. That's what this show is all about. And we understand no matter what we've done or what's been done to us, nothing can separate us from the love of God. Amen and amen. We're so glad that you tuned in today. And next week at 10 o'clock, our special guest will be Gina Mahan, another powerful woman of God. And we'd like you to share it. We'd like you to tell your friends. And constantly say, this is amazing grace. Think about all week, all the things. Sing about all the things that Jesus has done for you. It's a great day. We're going to get through this coronavirus. We're going to get through what's going on. We need to continue to pray for our nation. We need to continue to pray for the church. Tune in on Sundays at 10 a.m. at Victory Worship Center if you're watching live stream, or you can show up for live. Also on this show, Amazing Grace, in time we want to have a studio audience. So we encourage you to come, and I see a lot of things happening in the future, where this is going to go. So we'd like you to be part of it. So I pray that you have an amazing day. Thank you again, Deb, for a great teaching. I mean, Bev for a great teaching.
We can never talk together.
It's because it's Bev, Deb, 3 words. And Deb Campany. Again, don't forget about her books. Absolutely amazing. I also want to share, you can get This Is Your Year, or Holding On to a Promise When It Just Seems Impossible. You can go to victoryworship.com. Blessings to you. Have an amazing week. Again, thank you, Deb. Thank you, Bev. Blessings to you.
Thank you.